Welcome in, Shield Brothers and Shield Maidens, to Shield's Rest. I'm Brown.
And I'm True.
In Cross Shields, we're converting content from tabletop role-playing games such as Dungeons & Dragons into usable material for the Daggerheart and DC20.
We feel that you should have as much content as possible for the systems you love.
If it's your first time watching, or you're a returning viewer and haven't made the commitment just yet, consider subscribing or show some support with a like or comment.
Now unrest those shields and get ready to cross them.
Alright, so for today's Cross Shield video, Mark and I are going to be covering the Gnoll Flind and the Gnoll Witherling. I'm going to be converting it over to Daggerheart, and he's going to be converting it over to DC20. So if you're here for DC20, go ahead and skip over to his. He's got you covered. Now, if you're here for the Daggerheart side of things, let's go ahead and get into the Gnoll Flind first, and then we'll get into the Gnoll Witherling. So starting off with the Gnoll Flind, he's going to be our Tier 1 solo-type adversary, 13 difficulty plus 3 attack modifier, and a melee flail attack, 2d6 plus 8 physical damage. He's going to have a major of 10 and a severe of 20, 9 HP, and 6 stress. He's a beefy boy, so, he is a solo. That's kind of what we're looking for, but what we really want are these features. So looking at the features, the Gnoll Flind comes with the typical Violent Urge passive feature, but the difference here between all the other Gnolls and this one is the fact that he's able to use it twice in a scene instead of once like the other two. So looking at the Flail of Madness action, he's basically going to just mark a stress to do a flail attack. That's really all it is in the end, except with the added bit of him basically forcing the target to do a presence roll. And then if they fail, for whatever reason, if they fail, they are then basically going to look at their allies and go for the attack and just try and move within close range to attack one of their allies. Now with the Flail of Paralysis, the only difference between the Flail of Madness and the Flail of Paralysis is the fact that it's going to be a strength reaction roll, and in this particular case, they are going to be considered restrained and unable to take any action until a stress is cleared on that particular individual that is targeted by this Flail of Paralysis. The Flail of Pain, however, is going to be a lot more damaging. That's really all it is designed for, is to be a lot more damaging, or rather more painful. So what you're doing instead is you're just making a flail attack, typical flail attack. You're still marking the stress to be able to use this. However, you get to add in 2d8 plus 4 magic damage into the roll. So it's going to be just that much more damaging. You're pretty much going to be ensured to get that severe damage on whichever player you choose to use this on. Alright, now looking at the Gnoll Witherling. The Gnoll Witherling is just going to be your tier 1 minion. That's all this Witherling is. Nothing too crazy, but it's a good way of bulking out your Gnoll encounters, okay? So it's going to have a difficulty of 10, minus 2 to the attack modifier, 3 physical damage on a successful club melee attack. It's really all this is. Still the 1 HP, 1 stress. Nothing crazy about that. The only difference here is that this particular minion is going to come to the table with the Violent Urge passive like all the other Gnolls. Most minions don't come with other little passives like this. However, I figure it just makes a lot of sense for the Gnoll Witherling to have this, okay? Otherwise, it's all pretty standard for the other Gnoll Witherling features, and that's going to be your minion passive with the 4 in parentheses, and then the group attack, obviously going to cost 2 action points. But that is the standard stuff across the board for all other minions out there. Alright, that's it for part 2 of 4 for our Gnoll videos. This should help you to bulk out that list a little bit further, so hopefully you can start building some more encounters using Gnolls, particularly using that Flind. I'm just saying, as a solo, it's a killer solo and a lot of fun to make. So, had a lot of fun converting it over from D&D into Daggerheart. So, go wild with it, have some fun with it. Let me know down in the comments if you do actually end up using these guys at all. I'd be curious to know how they end up working out for you. In playtesting, it was a lot of fun for me, but that's me. I'm one individual. I'd be curious to know about you. So let me know down in the comments. However, if you are interested in DC20 at all, go ahead and check out Mark's conversion. He really does a good conversion. But also check out his videos on actually how to play DC20. Him and Fry take you through everything that you need to know to be able to play that game and to really get your feet wet with it. But if you're interested in that at all, go ahead and check out the playlist that's linked above.
Welcome in, Shield Brothers and Shield Maidens, to our second part of the Gnoll video under the Cross Shield series. In today's video, we'll be covering a boss adversary difficulty and another low tier adversary difficulty. First up, we have a D&D 5e 9 challenge rating Gnoll, which is called a Flind, right? So the Flind is a medium humanoid. We've made this one level 4 because it's a boss tier, so it's going to be a little bit stronger, and you're probably coming across this when you're already playing through the campaign a little bit, which level 4 brings us combat mastery of a 2 now versus a 1 in the previous video that you saw, so just keep that in mind. The HP is a little bit beefier. Obviously for a boss, you want to have that last several turns, so you might need to flex this HP again based off how many player characters are in the party. But this was probably good for 2 player characters, maybe 3, depending on their capabilities and understanding of the game system. But by the level they're taking this on, they're probably going to know what they're doing. So at least 2, maybe 3 players here, and then you can flavor in some of those other low tier gnolls in this battle as well if you feel like that's necessary, or call them in later if this is going a little too easy. As for attributes, we have Might of 9, because in D&D 5e, both Strength and Constitution are 5 and 4 for this adversary, so we put those together, which is 9. 11 comes from the +2 from Combat Mastery, and then again, Intelligence, based off of Intelligence and Wisdom from D&D 5e, this is +1, and then we get the +2 from the Combat Mastery. Next, we have Skills, which are Awareness and Intimidation. Awareness is that perception feature if you've played D&D 5e the most. So that's 9 based off of Might score, and Intimidation is also based off of Might score, 9 plus 2, that's 11. Senses are Dark Vision, again 12 spaces, equivalent to 60 feet. Languages in D&D 5e, this creature speaks Abyssal. However, we don't have that in DC20. That is the language of the demons, which is Fiendish in this system. For features, we're bringing back that Rampage feature. As you can see, this is going to get really deadly because this thing's going to hit very hard after 3-4 rounds. And we have a new feature on this one, which is called Enrage. This gains +1 attack. This gains +1 damage to all attacks after reaching the bloodied condition. In DC20, bloodied just means that you're half HP or less. So for this creature, 50 would be half of 50 would be 25. So from 25 and lower, you're doing an additional +1 damage. We give it 4 action points. However, we do increase the attack to hit, basically, and the save DC and the speed. We all gave them a little bonus up because this is the boss level difficulty now. The interesting thing about the Flind in D&D 5e is that it has 3 different flails, right? Flail of Madness, Flail of Pain, Flail of Paralysis. I've essentially built that into this in a different way. So the first attack, I've just named that the War Flail of Pain. It does 3 damage because at this level, it's going to be doing more base damage. And since it's using a flail, we've given it the Chained style, which allows it to ignore shields and half cover and actually do additional damage if it is attacking someone with a shield or half cover. And we also have the Longbow because that's a Gnoll staple, it seems. Same thing there, no changes. However, the attack enhancements are where we bring in that different type of flail that the Flind has from D&D 5e. For example, one of the attack enhancements is the Blood Whirl, which it can use a War Flail of Pain as an action and then flavor in a Blood Whirl with another +1, getting ahead of the game. It could also flavor in a Paralyzing Lashes, so it could do both of these at once with a War Flail of Pain. When it flavors in the Blood Whirl, this will make the creature that it's attacking do a physical save, and if it fails, it begins bleeding and becomes hindered. So that's actually really huge on just that one. Let's say you did also add in a Paralyzing Lashes, it makes another save to see if it's going to become paralyzed or not. So this Flind can really incapacitate one of the player characters with just a single turn of attacks. And then for the Apex features, wanted to flavor in something a little different here, which this does have as a trait in D&D 5e, but the Bloodthirst Aura, called Aura of Bloodthirst in D&D 5e. If this Flind is not incapacitated, then any creature with the Rampage feature, which is most of our other Gnolls, can make a bite attack check as a reaction while within 2 spaces of this Flind. So if you've got this Flind and 1 or 2 other Gnolls fighting a player character party of 3 or 4, they can really be putting in some damage. All 3 Gnolls are attacking nonstop, essentially. And it's really deadly if you've got the Blood Whirl and the Paralyzing Lashes and you're in round 3 or 4 combat, because then you're doing massive damage to whatever target you're hitting. So definitely a threat of a battle. And at level 4, that's going to be kind of tough. So you definitely want to make sure you know what you're doing when you come into this battle, which again, the boss difficulty is one that's going to want you to do some planning. Now, shifting off of that, we're going next into the Gnoll Witherling, which is the opposite end of the spectrum. This is just a 1/4 challenge rating in D&D 5e. So you can see right away it's a medium. This one's undead, not humanoid. And it's a level 1 bruiser, which we've seen the bruiser before. And again, low tier is what we're covering. Now, the HP on this one is very low because it's level 1. So its HP is just 5. You're supposed to be able to dispatch this in 1 round of combat. The mystical defense is also a little bit lower because it's undead. And the stats are carried over from D&D 5e. So we've got the strength +2, constitution +1 makes 3. And then we've got a combat mastery in that stat, which gives it a 4. With the agility, however, since it's a -1, the combat mastery pretty much gets canceled out, and that's a 0. And these things are not very charismatic or smart because they're undead, and they're just these 1/4 challenge ratings, so -3 in both charisma and intelligence. For senses, it has that typical dark vision that we've seen on the other gnolls. However, a few new features here is resistances to poison. It's actually immune to poison. And conditions, it's immune to exhaustion and being poisoned. For features, it has Enrage, not Rampage, right? So don't mix those up, but this one has Enrage as well. I know that might seem kind of silly, but it does gain an additional damage when it's bloodied. So if you have 2 or 3 of these and you've only got a two-party player character group and they're not focusing fire and they only hit one of them and lower it to half, then they're just making it stronger. So this could be really challenging with a group of new players that maybe aren't sure how to play or what they're capable of. And if they try to like do one-on-one type things and not support each other, then this could actually go south really quickly. For actions here, we've lowered the actions because it's supposed to be that weaker standard monster. So it doesn't have 4 action points. It only has 3. Its chance to hit with its attack bonus is lower. Its DC is the same, but its speed is also lower. It has a bite, melee 1 piercing, a club, melee 1 bludgeoning. However, the club has a little, a couple hidden passives from it. So it's got the hammer style, which lets it deal 1 additional damage to creatures that are dazed or petrified. May not come up too much when you're using this, but you could flavor that in for something fun here and there. And then the toss property, so it can actually throw that club in a short distance to make a ranged attack as well. The interesting thing about the Witherling from D&D 5e is the reaction it has, which is Vengeful Strikes. So it can use a reaction in response to another Gnoll being reduced to 0 HP that's within 5 spaces of this Witherling, and this Witherling can make 1 melee attack check as their reaction. So can definitely get deadly if you've got 2 of these. One goes down, but the other one's only weakened. It's getting that Enraged feature plus that Vengeful Strike. It's just adding in attacks when maybe you're not expecting it. So very interesting there for that Gnoll Witherling. Now, in our next video, we are going to be looking to cover just a standard Gnoll and a Gnoll Pack Lord, and also we're going to add in a third one, which is the Gnoll Fang of Yinogu. So stick around for those 3, which are all from the Monsters Manual. Please leave comments on what you think of these, and until next time, keep that shield wall strong.